A while ago, I remember a manga catching my attention. And no, I'm not talking about I Think Our Son Is Gay, it was a different manga. This one was posted to Twitter, and it got big, real big, like a total sensation. However, due to it being a Twitter thing, it was kind of hard to follow, so I didn't see anything more than the first chapter, but it was always in my mind. The only reason I even remembered what the manga is actually called is because it's getting an anime adaptation. And the name of that manga is The Guy She Was Interested In Wasn't a Guy at All. Or for short, Tigshiwiwaga. You know what, we're just gonna call it Green Yuri like everyone else. The manga is all about Aya Usawa, who's your average Japanese Garyu, but she has a secret love for rock music. As she's listening to an old Nirvana album, she's helped by a mysterious man and ends up catching a crush. But like you'd expect, that man isn't a man at all. In fact, he sits next to her in class. And her name is Mitsuki Koga. She just enjoys dressing butch and working in her uncle's CD shop, but it seems like she's gotten caught in the middle of something big. Future Fury here, interrupting his own video with some good news. A fourth high court in Japan has ruled that their ban on gay marriage is unconstitutional. It's a weird coincidence that every time I make one of these videos, I always hear some good news about gay marriage in Japan. Clearly, these two facts are related and I need to make more. Let's get a Let's Go Lesbians in the comments while I get back to the actual video. It's a super cute concept that works super well for an internet original manga, since its first chapter is, to quote Aerosmith, amazing. Since it's online, the chapters are super short at only 4 pages. As such, chapter 1 begins with Aya already in the CD shop. And she doesn't necessarily catch a crush, she already has a crush on the guy. Chapter 1 is really about Mitsuki realizing that at the end. It's quick, punchy, and ends with a huge plot twist and a comical expression, making it stay in your mind. And the quality of Green Yuri is something I'm super impressed with overall. It's not just the art, which is impressively well done, making both Mitsuki at school and Mitsuki at work look different, but also seeing hints of the shared features like our bangs. But also the layout of the pages, seeing characters frequently break through the panels is something you don't see from indie work all that often. Though that indie blood is still very apparent in Green Yuri's veins because the chapters are super short. The shortness of the chapters isn't really a problem for the most part, since it means the manga has to focus in on its main characters. I really enjoy the dynamic between Aya and Mitsuki in these early chapters, where it's focused on Aya pining after the crush she doesn't know can literally hear her. And these early portions are often pretty funny, lampshading the story with jokes like Mitsuki's uncle watching Aya give the guy at the music shop her number, or Aya catching a nosebleed after seeing Mitsuki get wet in the rain, proving to all Sanji haters that women can be gooners too. A thing that caught me by surprise as I was reading Green Yuri is that the main concept gets done away with very quickly. Like the name of the manga makes you think that the series will be about Mitsuki hiding her identity like Superman and Lois Lane, doing her best to preserve her secret until the big climax. Instead, Mitsuki gets caught at around 30 chapters into an over 100 chapter long manga. That's less than a third of the manga dedicated to what the title is about, which could very easily lead to a situation like Mama Yu Yu, where its audience drops off once they stop getting what they started reading for. And yet, Green Yuri keeps itself and its audience engaged by hinging itself not around the concept, but around its characters, Aya and Mitsuki. Part of what makes the first chapter in early series work is Aya and Mitsuki's personalities. The entire story is built around the popular girl unknowingly falling in love with the shy girl because they share a common interest, and that's what stays the same. No matter what happens or what they do, from going to prom to a music festival to even a school trip, it's always these two that are on screen or being talked about. So while the manga may not always be about the guy she was into actually turning out to be a girl, it is always about Mitsuki and Aya and their very gay relationship. But despite how gay this manga is, I've noticed something that's different about it from the rest. The thing that sets Green Yuri apart from a lot of, or at least a lot of the other queer stories I've read, is that despite it being gay, it's not about being gay. Okay, so that made no sense, so let me make this clear by using an example. And you better get used to hearing this name because this is not the last time I'm going to be mentioning I Think Our Son Is Gay. I Think Our Son Is Gay is a manga that's exactly what it says on the tin. It's all about a mother, Tomoko Aoyama, dealing with her son who's almost certainly gay. It's a manga with a gay character and a plot that is irrevocably tied to it. It's gay and about being gay. However, the same can't quite be said about Green Yuri. Yes, Green Yuri has gay characters. It does feature gay romance between two women. But the literal plot doesn't have to do with being gay at all. As of writing this, it has 117 chapters out, and the word gay, LGBT, lesbian, yuri, yaoi isn't used in any of them. Basically, the story isn't gay, but the characters are. This may sound like I'm harping on something pointless, but it actually matters a lot. The fact that Green Yuri is just a romance manga, not a gay manga. There's a lot of stories where the characters being gay means they have to face issues of homophobia, their place in the world, yada yada yada. Complaints about queer stories always being about homophobia isn't new or unique, so the fact that Green Yuri treats being gay as benign, something not even worth talking about, mean it has filled a very important role and niche. People don't necessarily think too much about Mitsuki dressing mask either. It never goes past people thinking it's a little weird but harmless. Instead of focusing on homophobia and other queer themes, the manga chooses to focus on something else to its benefit, that being how the characters work into its already existing themes and reinforce its narratives. Notable ones are Narita, the token boy of this whole shindig, and Aya's two Garyu friends, Chizuru and Mao. This is a slight side note, but Narita figures out it's Mitsuki who's the dude working at the CD shop pretty quickly in like one meeting, which has the side effect of me wondering if Aya needs glasses or if she's just a little stupid. Out of all these characters, Mao's the one with the least importance. She's really just there to be there, but her most notable moment is when after Aya opens up about her interests, she gives listening to rock music a shot too. It's Chizuru and Narita that have the bigger roles, with Chizuru being the second most noteworthy. She steps into a focus for a second after she gets jealous of Aya and Mitsuki's budding relationship. Like any good reviewer, I do try to look for other people's responses to see what they think, and the response to this arc was notably mixed, and I see why. The drama here was more than a little ham-fisted, but I do like the result we get from its aftermath. From here on out, Chizuru begins to act as Aya's wingman, helping her whenever she runs into a problem with Mitsuki. And her character of putting up this fake, begrudging attitude whenever she has to help Aya is pretty nice too. The most important of their classmates is Narita, who like Chizuru gets his start antagonistically before switching to a supportive side character. If Chizuru is Aya's wingman, then Narita is Mitsuki's. However, due to Mitsuki ultimately taking precedence over Aya a lot of the time, he's a much more important character than Chizuru. He's the go-to character when outside support on the relationship is needed from someone else. That being said, he does stand out as his own character. He's got a coy and playful personality, using his good looks and his silver tongue to his advantage. However, he's also the one most enthusiastically rooting for Mitsuki and Aya as he watches from the sidelines, which strikes me as, well, not a fujoshi, as that's a woman who's into yaoi and Aya and Mitsuki certainly aren't men. Then I thought himejoshi, but that's a woman who's into yuri, and Narita certainly isn't a woman. After a bit of digging, I did find the term himedanshi, which is a man who's into yuri, which would work, except we do see him taking interest in a straight relationship. And this is preceded by people asking why he doesn't have a girlfriend and stuff, so maybe he's just gay or asexual or something. But then he does say he's more suited to watching cute girls, so I guess his sexuality might as well be cockchair. Does any of what I just said have any actual point? Not really. I don't know why I'm speculating on a fictional character's sexuality, so I'm just going to move on. The side character I find most interesting is actually Mitsuki's uncle, Joe, who runs the aforementioned music store. I really do think Joe is the strongest side character out of them all. In the beginning, he's used for comedy, since he can clearly tell that his niece has a crush and whatnot. He keeps up well with the more lighthearted and jovial tone of the earlier manga, and while it isn't something he loses, more complexity is added the further the story goes. Hints of depth are added whenever we see Joe talk about romance. There's this almost bittersweet aspect to it that hints at something more, and that more is elaborated on in the form of Kana. She's Joe's ex, but everything is fine since they left on quite amicable terms. If Joe is a bumbler, Kana is more collected, often teasing and making fun of him whenever he gets riled up. The thing about Joe that also makes me like Kana so much is that the two of them just work together. Like, it's clear as day from pretty much the moment she shows up that that's basically Mitsuki's aunt. Like, despite showing up suddenly, she fits right in with every other character, like she's always been there. And that's part of what makes it so bittersweet, since she and Joe are so perfect together, but things just can't work out. And not only does this dynamic work because it's good to watch, it works because it's clear that Joe and Kana are meant to parallel Mitsuki and Aya. Back in the day, Joe was a musician and planned to move to LA, but eventually stayed behind while Kana went ahead to the States. But they discussed Joe's infatuation with music and how it ate up so much time and focus and energy on Joe's part that there wasn't really anything left for Kana. A problem Aya encounters as Mitsuki becomes more open and her music gets more popular. The last supporting character I want to talk about is Hina. She's the daughter of a music producer and thinks Mitsuki might be the next big thing. The thing that made me save Hina for last is that she's been introduced so recently into the story that I honestly can't say much more about her. Some might see her as the closest thing to an antagonist, and it is her offer to go to a music event that leads to some drama, but it's still too early in my estimation to say one thing or the other. I found myself being really engrossed with the story, in large part due to the way the side characters reinforce our two main ones. Every side character has a clear role in the narrative, from advice giver to situation pusher. It's kind of like those character archetypes in a comedy manga like Azumanga Daioh, when the specificity of the character archetypes help keep the story clearly defined. And yet, the same can't be said of Mitsuki and Aya. It's one of the things that I find fascinating because the story isn't protagonist and love interest. It's more like two protagonists who are both love interests as the story focuses on both characters' growth. For Aya, it's being more open with her interest in rock music, and for Mitsuki, who's already comfortable with her interests, it's to be less introverted and more open with other people. Which is part of the reason I find this manga fascinating, because both those plots seem symbolic and evocative of queer coding, you know? Queer coding is a way for the author to express that characters are gay without having them actually be gay, but in Green Yuri's instance, the characters are just straight up gay. Both Aya and Mitsuki are struggling to express themselves and feel constrained by the people around them. At first, they find support in each other, having someone to share something in common with, and freedom is further gained when they realize that the people around them are also supportive even if they don't share their interest. Which really does work to the manga's benefit because again, homophobia doesn't exist here. It's a way for the author to have their cake and eat it too. To address homosexuality without having to include any homophobia into the story. Even moments like when they all go to a music festival and Mitsuki gets a look at all the other people from so many different walks of life, she realizes that she isn't a misfit, that there is a place for her in the world. And the metaphor is only furthered when the lyrics to a song Mitsuki is working on are put up on the blackboard. Aya gets mad on Mitsuki's behalf, and Mitsuki herself even stops going to school for a week. This is a clear metaphor for being outed and a violation of personal autonomy. Interestingly, Mitsuki responds to this by owning her own identity. Showing up to school with the lyrics not just done, but the entire song completed, and from this point on, she even starts dressing how she prefers at school. Like the metaphor is thinly veiled, and honestly, it'd be worse if it wasn't. You could basically replace a music festival with a gay pride parade and have the exact same thing. All of this, like I said, lets the story have its cake and eat it too. It can address homosexuality and such themes while also telling nothing but your average romance story. Well, not quite average, because Green Yuri's is actually really good. I actually think it's at its strongest when it focuses on Joe and Kana alongside Mitsuki and Aya. If you recall, the characters are meant to parallel each other, with Joe and Kana supposed to be a couple that failed. I really do love when Joe and Kana's past comes to the forefront because there is so much sweet agony to it. It serves to give the reader anxiety about Aya and Mitsuki's relationship since we see that it can go belly up. It really pushes you to just keep reading, to go through page after page, chapter after chapter to see if Aya and Mitsuki can overcome whatever their problem is. And it's easy to get through since a lot of the chapters are only like 4 or 5 pages. Plot points move quick, going from beat to beat, but I do think that can hurt the manga sometimes. There are certain plot points that I think deserved more attention, and it's really weird. Because a plot point can last like 5 chapters, which sounds fine, but that's only like 16 pages. That's a little less, give or take, than a single chapter in Weekly Shonen Jump, and it shows. I'm not exactly sure how this problem would be fixed. Given the online format of the manga, it's understandable to have things move quickly with a limited number of pages. And that's pretty much where my criticism of the manga ends. Now here here's the part of the video where I ham-fistedly include all the things that I couldn't manage to fit earlier into the script. First of which is the manga's use of color. I'm also obligated to point out this guy in his video, because his video on Green Yuri was really helpful when making this. And it was actually his video that got me into paying attention to the way the manga uses color. It adds this layer of unreality to the manga, as what's in green is often meant to convey feeling and emotion rather than what's actually there. Like the background getting hazy as Mitsuki and Aya push themselves closer together, or the ephemeral shadows of a younger Gon and Joe as Aya is given advice. And how when characters are feeling terrible and emotionally turgid, the colors go from a bright green to a harsh black and then fixes itself as things are made right again. It's unique and distinct, entirely justifying how Green Yuri got its nickname. And finally, the last thing I want to discuss before I depart is the music. Now, some of you may be saying, "But Fury, manga doesn't have music, you five-head." And to that I say, okay, well, rude, didn't need to call me a five-head, but the manga does have music. Playlists are available on Spotify and YouTube of every song that's played in the manga. All the songs mentioned and briefly shown in the manga are as real as the bands that made them, but what's really cool is how they tie into the story. When Aya finally realizes her crush is the girl sitting next to her, she's hit with Loser by Beck. A gotcha song all about the singer and by extension Aya realizing that they've been made a fool by their own actions. Then her doubts are embodied with Paranoid by Black Sabbath as Aya sinks further into the realization of what happened and this love begins to feel fake and unreal. And finally, Heart-Shaped Box by Nirvana, a song about the singer asking if they were actually in love or just like the idea of being in love. All these songs aren't just filler or theming to make the manga different, they are there to convey mood and theme, to make sure you know exactly what these characters are feeling. You are doing yourself a major disservice if you don't listen to these songs as you read. The guy she was interested in wasn't a guy at all is an astoundingly good manga. Like to the point that it's a no-brainer that it got turned into an anime, and I'm surprised it took this long. From the characters, to the art style, to even the music, it's all so wonderful, and that's why I super recommend you read it. Remember to like and subscribe and check out my Ko-fi and Patreon as I get to our Patreon shoutouts. For our 3 stars, we have special thanks to Troron, SkyKing64, 80 Sunwara, Garen LaFaze, Original, Venomous, Rillaboom378, The Good Old Days, and Stasi. For 4 stars, we have Miki Moon, McCoides, and Utterly Awe, The Pretenders. And finally, for our Super D2per special 5-star shoutouts, we have Hodari Lion, The Stairway to Heaven. Thank you for watching, do be sure to like and subscribe. As always, this is Rose Fury, signing out.